Hi, I'm Mike Lappel from BizNews.com. Energy provision, or the lack thereof, in South Africa remains a massive problem. 2022 is probably the worst year on record for load shedding since the terrible phenomenon was introduced to the country back in 2007. The president recently announced measures that would push South Africa's energy provision in a different direction, opening it up to greater investment from the private sector, including a much larger solar and wind component. But these projects will take time, years in many cases, and South Africa's energy availability will remain constrained for years, with load shedding an almost permanent part of our daily existence now. Chris Opperman is the founder and convener of the Afrikaner Africa Initiative, the AAI, that just concluded what he tells me is a successful energy indaba in the Western Cape. And it included a host of role players in that space, from Solidarity. You had a former chief executive from Eskom and the current chief operating officer, Jan Oberholzer, as well as the mayor of Cape Town. Chris, good morning. Thank you for joining us. What is
Good morning,
the
Michael.
Afrikaner Africa Initiative? Let's start there.
It's an initiative that was started with a strategic discussion with President Thabo Mbeki. I spent my career in Tanzania, was very close to people that were supporting the ANC during the struggle. And Ami Mpungwe, a close friend of mine and who was also ambassador in South Africa, uh, introduced me to President Mbeki in 2015 for two reasons. The one was our worry about South Africa and where the country was heading, but secondly, also a worry about the Afrikaner community and a sense of alienation that was experienced by our community. And in Tanzania, I was accepted as an Afrikaner, and the attitude towards Afrikaners were very positive, that we could make a contribution to the continent. And the idea was to rekindle the process of discussion that started in the 80s and see to what extent we could talk again about a new compact and the role of Afrikaners in that compact. In the 80s, we were in power, and in the 2000s and 20s, we are not in power, but we are a group of a community that is not going away, and we would want to make a contribution. We are building very strong institutions now for our own survival, but we want to reach out and work with everyone in South Africa and Africa to make a difference. And so the strategic discussion with President Mbeki culminated after 5 years of track two diplomacy in a joint declaration that was signed a year ago, in which we committed ourselves to joint projects and a commitment to work together. And that is now broadening out to other organizations as well. And in the meantime, we've registered an NPO, and we're trying to get involved in a positive way.
I suppose to be part of the solution, not just criticize from the sidelines, is the idea.
Yeah, you get people that actually make a living out of criticizing. That's
Yes.
that's a nice niche, but I think we're at a point where we want to make a contribution towards solutions for our country and for the continent.
All right. Let's get to the content of the energy indaba. One of the topics that was up for discussion was the theme of greater participation by communities in workable government solutions. Is this a call for investment into IPPs from the private sector, or how best can communities or organizations be part of the solution? And as we say, or we've just said, not just criticize from the sidelines.
Yeah. Well, the focus very much was on communities. Um, the fact of the matter is that for too long we assumed that Eskom would be there, would be providing power, and government would provide. And we are now in a situation where communities have to take charge of their own futures and will take charge of their own futures. And we want to make communities part of the discussion and part of the solution. And so, if you're only going to have a situation of government and IPPs and big energy talking to each other, the solutions are not going to take communities into consideration. And we want to be part uh, of that narrative. And so that was why we thought in every community in South Africa, there is a sizable Afrikaner community, um, and and they are very active. And the idea was then to get an interaction going between local municipalities uh, and different communities, and see to what extent, through civil society action, we can get cooperation and find solutions. So the idea with this conference was not to invite a commercial discussion as such. We don't want to take a position on which technology is the best. We wanted to create a platform for all the new technologies, alternative energy solutions, green energy. We had a platform for nuclear energy, and we had Jan Ober also talk about the role of Eskom, and we just want to be part of the discussion and be part of the solution.
I see. So Jordan Hill Lewis, the mayor of Cape Town, has been very vocal about municipalities being able to purchase electricity from IPPs privately, not being so beholden to Eskom, particularly because it's struggling, and I think I'm being kind there. And the city of Cape Town has introduced feed-in tariffs for local businesses. You know, if you slap on a solar panel onto your roof or at the mall or at a parking lot, if you can generate excess electricity, the city is willing to buy it from you. The city of Cape Town seems to be leading the way in which it approaches this crisis. Is that the impression you got from the mayor's talk?
I think absolutely. I think we were very impressed by the mayor. He spoke without any notes, and he gave a very coherent, uh, uh, account of what Cape Town is doing. He talked about the Steenbras Dam and the fact that it is very well maintained, and that Cape Town is doing everything in its power to support independent power sources that the city controls and manages. It also focused on the preservation of energy and incentivizing residents to implement measures, to save energy. And then he also talked about the fact that there has been changes now announced that will allow for bigger powers to be devolved to city level to actually solve the energy crisis. And the fact is that if Eskom cannot provide for whatever reason, it is unreasonable to expect local communities to be without power. So they have a right to then find alternative solutions. And I think the mayor laid out a very good narrative in terms of what Cape Town is doing. So we were very impressed. He also opened the conference for us, or the Indaba, because it was held in Cape Town. I could only also say that we had very good representation from all the Garden Routes metros, and also a variety of Northern Cape metros. So we had mayors from Hessequa, from Plet, and from George, and Douglas, and Uppington, and those places. So it was really very well represented by municipal officials and elected officials.
Jan Oberholzer, the Eskom Chief Operations Officer or Operating Officer, I suppose no better person to lay out just how difficult the situation is at the moment. And did he share at all some of the realities on the ground, and maybe what South Africans can expect in the short to medium term?
I think he tried to explain to us, and I think he was very candid about the current situation, saying that Eskom is doing everything in its power to, no pun intended, to solve the energy crisis, but that the fact of the matter is that long-term decisions and long-term implementation is what is called for, and yet people are asking for immediate solutions, and there's just no such quick turnaround possible. And so he explained the reasons for older generation coal fired power stations that would not be replaced, that are getting older and older, that maintenance is becoming a problematic, and that alternative energy sources have yet to be built. And so we are really in a very difficult spot where due to maintenance, lack of new power stations, and other reasons, we could expect for the next 2 years at least that load shedding are going to be part of our life. So he was very candid about it, but also I think he gave a sense of hope that the plans were put in place to turn things around. But his final comment was that it actually needs South Africa Inc. to solve the problem. South Africa, all of us need to understand and get involved in finding solutions.
Well, one of those solutions definitely seems to be nuclear. At least it's part of our energy mix, but Koeberg is getting old. But I see Dr. Kelvin Kem made a case for nuclear technology. And, are we continuing to resist this? I mean, if you cast your mind back a couple of years, you had the 1 trillion rand Russian nuclear deal, and 1 trillion was probably conservative, knowing how behind budget or over budget and behind schedule we are with things. What's your feeling? Is there a case to be made for especially small modular nuclear reactors? Is that where Dr. Kem was going with that idea?
I think the point he was trying to make, and also Andre Pinar, who's a venture capitalist that joined us from Washington, was that pebble bed nuclear technology and modular nuclear technology is actually being developed in South Africa, and
Yeah.
that we were ahead of the curve and is actually world leaders in nuclear development. And for some other reason, the Zuma government basically stopped the program that was developed at the Northwest University and went and started negotiations with from abroad for older generation nuclear technology that would cost in magnitude, different magnitude from what we could have done here locally.
Yeah.
And I think that's the point that he was making. Um,
Yeah.
that technology has now developed further in the United States, and fact of the matter is that it is now, as we understand it, and as how Calvin explained it, that it is actually available and can now they're ready to implement. Fact of the matter is that it's going to take time. So any nuclear development will take time, uh, and um, and so it doesn't solve our short-term problem, but must, according to him, be part of our longer-term energy mix.
Hmm. I see you even had the former chief executive Jacob Marocha from Eskom there. He was making a case for renewables, a word, a catchphrase that's very popular in the world right now, off the back of COP 27. Is there acceptance, at least from the case that he's pushing, that yes, it can't form part of our base load, but it must play a much larger role in our power generation going forward?
I think impression I got from him is that he's technology agnostic. So he's not. I think he's very much in favor of a mix of solutions. Very interesting that he talked about Hendrik van der Bijl and the vision that Hendrik van der Bijl and Jan Smuts had, and that it was long-term plans that got Eskom going back in the day, and that industrialized the country. And he gave us a rendition of the history of Eskom. And so, by saying that, he was trying to say that you can't just, think that you're going to run an industrialized country with short-term decision making. And we need to get back to a situation where long-term plans are made. That was the point he was making. But in this current crisis, I think the point that he was making was that renewables, solar, and also wind has an important place in our mix. And then also gas. We didn't have anyone talking about gas, but a lot of questions came, and was discussed around gas as a transition energy source, potential source. Fact of the matter is that we have discovered gas at Brulpadda, close to Mossel Bay. But of course, again, when you talk about gas, you need a gas supply and quite an infrastructure. So Jacob Moroga made a very impassioned plea, I think, for a balanced approach that recognizes the importance of Africa taking decisions in Africa's own interest, and given where South Africa is in terms of its own development.
Well, my last question is where to from here? If you listen to Eskom, they recently gave a presentation to Parliament's joint Portfolio Committee on Public Enterprises and Mineral Resources, with Eskom saying that the worst case scenario for the next 12 months is 326 days of load shedding. That's about 11 out of 12 months of load shedding. And you're advocating for that there must be political will to exist to address community interests. And we can't just lump this on the private sector. Are you confident there is this political will?
Well, that is what the AI is about, is to get a dialogue going in a cooperative manner to make sure that we can influence the government to make the right decisions. If government is going to be ideologically intransigent, then I think we've got a bleak few years ahead of us. I think the message that came back loud and clear, also from communities, is that urgent action and urgent decision making is needed. I think deregulation is a part of that in the short term to unleash the potential of the private sector and of innovation. And we had quite a few speakers that were talking about solutions, a green energy solution that, for instance, green hydrogen combined with ammonia that is now it's been developed or is being developed for local communities. And so Percy van Staden was talking about that, and Bernardus is the company that he's involved with. We also had other players that were talking about solutions in the Northern Cape, in Prieska. They're very far advanced in German funding for the solutions that they offer, but the fact of the matter is that we must look at opening up and deregulating and allowing the private sector to play its part.
We live in hope. Chris Opperman, great to chat to you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael.